And Larry will chime in when he can. I know he's driving, but we've done this before, and Daniel was involved in one parallel lesson with Kristi, and that was with Jessica. And now we have Enson, Mr. Fong. Is that correct? Am I saying that name right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Fantastic. And also with Kristi, who is over here. But maybe that would be a good thing to do is to introduce yourselves a little bit, and then we'll just go from there. And HM, if you want to kind of lead the discussion format and who's talking when, we can go from there. So first off, maybe
Yeah,
introduce
it's okay
yourself.
by me. In fact, it seems that Larry is actually coming in right now.
Yeah, so he just jumped back on, and maybe he will be able to help facilitate this. And I just don't see his microphone on yet. So
Yeah, probably before we start, we just introduce ourselves to each other, so that we know who we are when we are doing the discussion later on. So I'm Ho Ming from Hong Kong U CEL, Center for Education and Leadership. We have two teachers here from Fokin, and Jessica and Enson. Can you introduce yourself?
I'm the first from parallel lesson with Kristi, the teacher from Hong Kong side, and Enson is the teacher from this parallel lesson.
great.
Hi, I'm Enson. Can you see
Hi,
me?
Enson.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And over here with Elko.
I'm Kristi. I taught the both lessons. And
Hi,
I'm Julie Vicente.
Nice to see you again.
I'm the superintendent, and we have
Hi, I'm Barb Davis. I'm the assistant superintendent.
Hi,
Barb was
welcome.
sit in on the parallel lesson that Kristi taught. I was not in the district that day, so Barb is now a part of the lessons and got to see how we do this. And so she's joined us this morning for the debrief.
Great, great. Welcome.
And on Bryce Walker, I'm involved in some of the filming as well as the research behind this. And we have Monica.
Good morning, I'm Monica. I work with NISL. I had the pleasure of being in Kristi's classroom both times for both of her lessons. And I would like to thank Kristi and Daniel for just your patience with all of my emails to get this scheduled.
Yeah, thank you, Monica.
And we have Cerinthia, who's one of our math experts here at NISL.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening. My name is Cerinthia Anderson, and I am a math content specialist with the National Center.
Great. It's the only one tonight that we have a math specialist. We should have, two here, but they found that they have no time to attend this one. They only attend tomorrow session. So welcome to you, Cynthia.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And hi, this is Larry. Can you finally hear me?
We can now.
Oh, excellent. I don't know that it will hold up. I've actually been on the call for about 15 minutes, but dialed in by phone, and for some reason, it took a couple times to dial in. As Bryce pointed out, I'm actually driving up to Harrisburg today. So I'm in the car and will probably do more listening than speaking, but hopefully this will maintain connection. But anyway, it's great to be part of this again. The Hong Kong team, I hope you guys are doing okay. Certainly looking at all of the pictures from over here, it looks pretty chaotic, but you're all there, so that's good.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go on.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sorry for the interruption. In fact, I just, that asked you to drive safe because you are driving.
Yes. Oh,
so,
okay.
So let me do the introduction.
I will do that. I'm actually pulled to the side. I haven't left my neighborhood yet, but I am in my car, so I'm parked. as I start this and get logged in. Now I'm going to start driving. Actually, I will let you, HM, do the intro as to maybe what, you know, how the debrief should proceed. I wanted to comment that this is an opportunity for us to, I think, also talk a little bit about the process, because we've done this now with this same team a second time. And so I would be interested, not at first, I think first to go through the debrief as we did last time, but before we end, I would love to hear something about how the experience of the first session may be influenced this particular lesson, and, you know, what you learned from watching each other, the reflection on watching your own lesson last time, and how that might have influenced anything that you did this time, even though the topics were very different.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. So that I would like to do a very brief introduction of this project, particular to some newcomers who the first time joining us. So in fact, we have some other people who have joined us not the first time, but for the newcomer, I would say this is a project, interesting project, started long time ago, already about now it's almost 20 years. But originally we have been doing that, you know, in Hong Kong, with the lesson between Hong Kong and mainland China mainly. But now we have the opportunity to carry out this project together with the lesson and the teachers in the United States. So I think that is something very interesting and wonderful. So the idea of these parallel lessons is to let teacher teaching in different systems. They teach the same topic to the student and design the lesson by themselves, but we observe each other, you know, how we implement, how we design and implement our lesson. And after we teach our lesson to our students, then there will be opportunity for us to share our views and share our reflection on the two lessons. So now this is the debrief section that we are going to do. So basically what I'm trying to do is to invite the two teachers who taught the two lessons, very briefly talk about their design of the lesson, and, you know, maybe do some reflection on what they have been, they have done in the lesson. And also, if they wish, they can actually talk about the other lesson. And then we will move on to open the discussion to the floor and let other people to talk about their views. And then we would like to invite particular the math specialists to make comment at the end. So could I invite now Mr. Fong, Enson here, to talk about his lesson first, and then I will invite Miss Riches, you know, just over there, you know, to talk about his lessons. So Enson first.
Okay, I first describe the backgrounds of our students as primary 5 students. Actually they have learned fractions and decimal, but I assume that they have no ideas about the percentage. And when I design the lessons, I think that they may have questions in mind that we already have learned the fractions, but why we have to learn another topic's percentage? And they may think that what really percentage is, and also what percentage related to their daily lives. Therefore, I designed the lessons is like this. This is only an introduction to them, so that they know percentage is really related to them, and what the difference between percentage and fractions. Therefore, the set of the lessons is I first introduce to them, that is what the difference between fractions and percentage first. Second, why we choose 100 as the denominator, and what is the advantage of choosing 100 as the denominator, so that they know that this is a standard. It's only a standard. That 100 is the percentage standard. So that in using percentage, it's easier to compare in different situations, especially in daily life. And other than the lessons, I expect the objective is, you know, the advantage of using percentage and what is really related to their daily lives, and they have a foundation that actually is nothing special. They can really relate it to the fractions topics they have learned before. This is the main set of main design of these lessons. And after the lessons, I observed that most of our students meet my aim and objective. This is a brief introduction on my lessons design.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fong. Any very quick question that anybody would like to ask Mr. Fong about his lesson, also the background, before I invite Kristi, to talk about her lesson? Any question?
Not yet.
Okay, then in that case, I would like to invite Kristi, to talk about your lessons, including your lesson design and also the implementation of the lesson, also your reflection. Perhaps you can also make some observation of Mr. Fong's lesson in Hong Kong.
Okay, well, my students, 5th grade, 10 years old, my looking at them as I designed my lesson was the fact that it was the end of May, which here means the end of school. So I needed to design something that was going to be engaging and keep them active with me. So we also had done fractions and decimals earlier in the year, so they were already aware of all of those requirements before talking about percentages. We talked about how it relates, again, just like Mr. Fong said, to daily life, which they were quick to understand and recognize. As I sat and designed the lesson, again, I really thought about, okay, how am I going to keep their attention and what is it they need to know? I was looking at some basic information, but also some higher level information, because I do have some kids who are above the bar, and I want to make sure they were with me as well. I used the video to help teach me the lesson, which I think we used the same video. I don't know, which I thought was funny. So I used the video, but I also used a lot of interaction with the kids, because that helps to keep them engaged. And again, here at the end of May, it's sort of like they're a little crazy. I'm sure they are at the end of school for you too. So I was worried about keeping them active with me. So we did some problems on the board. We got up, I had them up and moving to do some problems on their own. Then we came back and talked about them. Again, the real life, they really understood how I use a percentage at the grocery store or to buy the latest video game kind of thing. So we talked about all of those types of topics. I thought the kids did well. They enjoyed it. I think they knew more than I gave them credit for as I designed and thought about the lesson. Many of them already understood percentage. A number of them understood that it was already out of 100, and maybe that comes from, and I don't remember, but I might have brought that up as we did fractions a little bit. But I thought the lesson went well. They had worksheets at the end to work on, which I differentiated between what I consider the highest math level, and then the mid to lower level got a different worksheet, because I had a couple of gifted kids. I also have a student in my room who, although he's in 5th grade, took 6th grade math. So I wanted to give them something a little more challenging to work on while the others worked on some basic percentages.
Okay, thank you, Kristi. So I would like to ask any questions, any question about the background of the student or some details of the lesson of Kristi class? Any question?
So Kristi, you, I think, answered this question, but I was just curious. It's really a question for the two of you. So when I looked at it, I was surprised that you had the same video. So you did not plan that. It sounds as if it was just pure coincidence.
No, it's just a good video that I liked.
Yeah.
And Enson?
Yes. Because I designed the lessons because you know, for 10 years old kids, actually you cannot spend the lessons only talking. More variety of the lessons to make them pay more attention. Therefore, a clip of the videos make them more understanding of the percentage in a visual way, rather than just listen to what I'm teaching. Therefore, I find that normally in different lessons, I try to search the internet, search YouTube, using some clips of the video. May not be the whole video, only small clips, so that the students may at least pay attention besides my lectures. And then after that, I stop the videos and continue my session. And I observe that the students during the whole lessons, they will be more concentrated and more attentive. This is my usually design the lessons will be like this, rather than spend the whole lessons just talking.
Absolutely, I agree 100%.
Thank you.
Nari, any follow-up question?
Do you always? I'm sorry.
Yep, that was it for me for now.
Okay.
I just want, do you always teach in English?
Come again, the question you asked Enson whether he taught English before, or?
Do you always teach your lessons in English?
In English.
Yes. My math lessons is the medium instruction is English.
I didn't know if that was.
In fact, the school is an EMI school, yes. English Medium Instruction School in Hong Kong. Not too many of them, you know, at the primary level. So we have more in secondary level, but primary level we do have some. You know, to some extent, we call it private school, or in Hong Kong, more complicated, we call it DSS school. They would use English as the medium of instruction for all subjects except Chinese.
Yes.
Starting from primary 1, am I right? Starting from primary 1, grade 1.
This is Bryce. Can I ask a question? I was able to be involved with Kristi's lesson and see in her classroom and notice the differentiation because I was in the room and she had some fifth graders who were advanced to sixth grade and the lesson was really a sixth grade lesson. Was that the same experience for you, Mr. Fong, where you had students who were prepared for this sixth grade curriculum, or what's your experience with your levels in your classroom?
What's the question?
What was your experience? What's your how did your students react to this type of lesson? You said they all knew the material before, but was this a sort of a sixth grade lesson that you were teaching to your fifth graders?
Actually, the student is primary 5. They are going to promote it to primary 6. Actually, this topic percentage is primary 6 curriculum. It's not primary 5 curriculum. That means in the next year, we are going to teach percentage.
Right. So did some of your students, did everyone feel prepared for that lesson? Were they well prepared for that, being their primary 5 and this was a sixth grade or primary 6 lesson? Or was there anything that you needed to do before this lesson to get them ready?
Actually, no. Because they already learned the fractions, they already learned the decimal. And I assume, actually, most of them know nothing about the percentage. Of course, in their everyday life, they will meet many measurement talking about percentage, but they know nothing about what really percentage is. Therefore, at first, I designed the lessons as a introductions so that they know why percentage. I think in their mind is they have this question in mind. Therefore, I let them know why in mathematics or why in everyday life we have to design something called as percentage. And why 100? This is my main objective to introduce to them. Why not 10? Why not 5? Why not 25? And why 100? So that they know, oh, 100 means more convenient, easy to do. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, so may I open, the discussion to the floor? Anybody that you have some question or views that you would like to talk about. So perhaps I would like to invite, Jessica from here first to start with. And Jessica have, conducted another one with Kristi early on. So this is her second time, doing parallel lessons. Oh, no, I would say, take part in parallel lessons. So anything that you would like to say, Jessica?
I really feel it's my pleasure to watch Kristi's video, and I really enjoy the lesson. And I think I can strongly feel that you want to link them with the daily life things. For example, the questions that you prepare, stick on the wall are all questions that related to daily life, like discount. And I can see you prepare the lesson well, quite a lot of preparation. And also you use diagonal questioning in the start, and then about 5 minutes to 10 minutes questionings, then you start video. Start to let them to watch a video to help you to teach them the concept as well. And I think the student-teachers relationship is good, and the discipline I think is quite good too. The lesson. One interesting thing is in Hong Kong, in P6 we have few topics that we separate teach. For example, discount, decimal multiplication, or fraction multiplication, and percentage. We separate these three topics in Hong Kong syllabus. Is it the same in US or just curious?
The decimals and the fraction are kind of taught at the same time, like in order. Percentage and discount really has gone to 6th grade, so I'm not completely sure, to be honest, how they do it. My guess is it's probably pulled together because they're related. If that makes sense.
So am I right that they have already learned decimal multiplication before?
Yes.
And they are they already mastered the skills to do the decimal multiplication.
Correct.
And therefore now you try to apply, ask them to apply their skills in calculating some percentages problems.
Absolutely, because I wanted them to understand that, okay, well, this is what a percent is, but why do we have them? What are we doing with them? So I gave them, if this is 5% off of X amount, what does that mean? But I'm not sure, to be honest, if that's exactly what they do in 6th grade. That was just my take on the standard that we use here in America.
So in fact, that in Hong Kong, I just talked to Enson before. It seems that in Hong Kong, they also, the students also already learned decimal multiplication before. But if we look at the design of the two lessons, basically Enson lesson is an introduction, not try to link up to other things. But Kristi lesson link up to decimal multiplication, for example. So could I ask you, Enson, why there's no that kind of integration or linking up, with different mathematical concept and skills with the percentage in your lesson?
Because for me, it's because I think the lessons is only maybe contributes only 35 to 40 minutes, and for a more solid introductions to them, I think one lesson is just enough. Therefore, I don't relate it to modifications of decimals or modifications of fractions. It may be taught in the next lessons or lessons onward, rather than put them all in one lesson. And also in these lessons, I try to also introduce, rather than in addition to the percentage, the symbols, and also I want them to know what the meaning is. 100%. This I also introduce in the worksheet. And after these lessons, I want them to have a very solid concept of the percentage first, and then for others manipulations or the related topics with modifications of decimals or fractions extended to the next lesson. That's my main design of this lesson.
Thank you. Enson? Question from Julia and also, your colleagues there.
We'll get Barb in. One of the things that I thought was interesting was the use of questioning. And I think as we've seen this now in 2 lessons, and seeing Kristi teach 2 times, I always key into that use of questions and how they're used to scaffold students' understanding. And that was one of, I thought, the differences that was between the 2 lessons. And maybe it's just stylistic. But I thought that was interesting as a concept that stood out. How Kristi worked on prior knowledge and trying to understand if kids had heard about a percentage like in a tip or when they're purchasing something at the store, and connecting to that real world, real life experience, and then taking them into how you would use this concept to figure out a tip at a restaurant for good service. You also did a nice job teaching a life lesson of that was my husband heard it last night too. So Paul, my husband was listening too, and he said that's really good that she's teaching them good service, you tip. But I thought that was just very interesting how all of those items were pulled in. Do you want to add anything? Let me put Barb on the. We're gonna.
Yeah. And I was thinking as Kristi was teaching the lesson and I was in the classroom, what are the applications in Hong Kong for percentages? So we have tipping, and when we go to a restaurant, we're expected to provide a tip for the server for us. We have sales. So we have all of these American applications for percentages that students need to be able to know. Are there any applications for percentages that are unique to Hong Kong?
Maybe in the next session I will talk about some how to calculate the sale, 30% off or 20% off. And another, maybe in Hong Kong, calculating the tips is not so popular, or the student may not be quite interested in this. It's quite different in this case. Because usually in Hong Kong it's 10% service charge. 10% service charge. It's not so, for them it may not be relevant to them actually, for the students. Rather than how about the sale in supermarket or sale in some department store, they may be more easy to understand in this kind of examples.
You did mention one example is about the weather, right? It's talking about the possibility of raining.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate a little bit more about that example?
For the raining, usually for the rainfall, usually the observatory using some percentage to announce about the rainfall in a particular day, and the students may listening to the weather reports, they may come across this kind of percentage. Therefore, I try to use this to arouse the interest on that. So they related to them actually every day when they hear the weather reports.
Any supplement from Jessica about real example of using percentage in real life in Hong Kong?
Normally, in Hong Kong, when we teach the discount, we have topic teaching discount. They use a lot of daily life, for example, the discount from the shop, and sometimes we will also go into deep for the fraction. And we use the bar model to help teaching this topic as well. For example, the bar that is how many percent off, and then we use the bar to teach them the multiplication part that you show in your lesson. We normally will use some math teaching strategies when we do discount. So in discount chapter in Hong Kong is a very big topic, and it is a topic that in the middle term of the P6, and then we will put into many teaching strategies in that topic in Hong Kong syllabus.
Other question, comments?
At what point, if ever, do you bring in a calculator?
This is another question I want to ask is, I've seen your videos about you have a pack of calculators on the teacher's desk. Are they in your levels? The students is already allowed to use calculators?
The way I work is I teach them all paper and pencil first because I feel like they need to understand the process before they start punching numbers into a calculator. But we are allowed to use calculators, and they do need to become comfortable. So they already knew how to use them with the decimals and the fractions. So I felt like it was an easy introduction to give them the calculator to figure out the percentages. But yeah, we are allowed to use calculators. So I do teach them at some point. Sometimes they get mad at me because I don't give them to them because I think their brains should do the work. But we do use them. Do you use them at all?
In Hong Kong, the students are not allowed to use calculators in the primary, actually. But in sometimes I observe when I give the students some homework to do at home, I think they use the calculators. And they are not allowed to use it in school. But for me, for my opinions, for primary, I don't think it's not quite good for them to use the calculators. Otherwise, the way the manipulations of the fractions, divisions, or multiplications, and also the decimals, they are not quite used to do it. It depends on keying the numbers and just press the equal sign. They got the numbers. They got the results. But I really know that they will use calculator at home when doing their homework.
But not for the public examination, right? In Hong Kong, they are not allowed to use calculator in examinations. So how about in the US?
Yes, they are allowed to use them. In my classroom, if they're going to use calculators, they need to write down exactly what they've put in the calculator so that I know it wasn't a lucky press. And then they can show me that they understand the concept. But they are allowed to use calculators, not for every test or every question, but they are. But our state standardized tests, all but I think it was 3 questions this year, they're allowed to use the calculator. So it really is to my advantage for them, or to their advantage, that I do teach them both paper and pencil, make sure they're secure, but then show them this is what you need to enter into the calculator. These are what the different buttons mean. Otherwise, I'm kind of setting them up for failure on that state exam.
Perhaps one of the distinct differences in the US standards versus Hong Kong standards is that while our standards have the content expectations, there are also expectations in terms of practice or process. And one of them, which Kristi does a really nice job of, is the idea of helping the students use tools strategically. And so, which would make sense as to why there's a portion of the assessment that they can actually use a calculator, because we want the state assessments aim to determine not just how students can manipulate calculations, but then how they can also use the relevant tools when needed to demonstrate their understanding or their ability to use them. So Kristi, that was one of my observations there, does a really nice job of not just attending to the content standards, but also being intentional about the attention to those math practices.
Thank you.
This is Larry. I have a question, and I apologize if it was already covered because I'm having a little trouble hearing. I think I followed most of this. I heard conversation early on about the intent of each lesson, sort of how you designed it. Could each of you speak to the process of planning the lesson? Did you do it on your own, especially since it reached to a different grade level? Did you involve other teachers? So what was your process for designing the lesson?
Any direct communication between us, Enson?
When I design the lessons, I work on my own first and try to make the PowerPoint, compose the worksheet, and get the videos. And after I design it, I let Jessica to take a look first because she is more experienced than me in teaching primary because previously I'm teaching secondary. Therefore, she is more experienced about the standard of the students, and so that if my design it will be too long or too short, too difficult, whatever. Therefore, these lesson designs has been a little bit of modifications before the final implementation.
So Larry, was your question actually asking about the communication between Kristi and Enson, or
No,
just
no. The answer that he just gave is what I was asking about, which is what was his process for planning the lesson. And Kristi, would you mind speaking to that as well?
Sure. I did not plan with anybody. I sat down, looked at the standards briefly, and then using my knowledge of my students and what they knew and what they were comfortable with, planned the lesson based on that. I didn't have anybody review it. I normally don't. So I just went with my gut basically and what I thought my students could handle and used my resources that I have here in my room.
Thank you.
Thank you. I saw that, Siranthia, there's thing that you have a question, and Monica as well. So, and yeah, please, anyone that you would like to say anything.
Yeah, I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Saranthia.
Oh, no. I didn't have a question, just feedback. I think the thing that I appreciated, which has already been addressed, is the intentionality of the question across both classrooms. Kristi's classroom, it was really more of a focus on helping the students transfer what they understood about the process of calculation to real situations and really understand the magnitude or the value of what the 100 represented. However, in Mr. Fong's class, he does a really nice job of questioning for the instance. He asked a question really early on that I thought was important, and it was, how did you find the answer so fast? Is that a good way to compare two fractions? And so while the style of questioning or the aim of the questioning was different across the two classrooms, I found that they were both very relevant when we think about what the overall goal was to accomplish at the end of the lesson. So thank you. Questioning sometimes, especially in primary, is not necessarily really intentional, but it was obvious that you both put a lot of thought into what you wanted your overall learning goal to be and how to get students to that point.
Thank you. And Monica?
I just wanted to build on, I think it was Bryce's earlier question about differentiation. Being in Kristi's classroom, I noticed that my impression was that it was sort of very open about, there are a lot of different students at different levels. The student is taking 6th grade math. sort of an openness about that, like some of the worksheets might be different. That seemed to be something that the students were comfortable with. And I was wondering if I could ask the Hong Kong teachers sort of what your, was that something that felt familiar to you, or if not, what might be the approach in Hong Kong to having many different students in the classroom who are approaching the topic at different levels?
Diversity.
Or diversity. Diversity means sometimes I will do it like this. I will try to, for these topics, I assume it's ordinary levels for all the students. It's not so difficult one. And for some difficult topics, I try to design different levels of worksheets to cater for different levels or diversities. And maybe some of the worksheets is more advanced and some are just elementary ones, so that they know the basic concept. But for this, I do not design this kind of worksheets because I think for different levels they are not quite difficult to get this concept. For other topics, I may design different levels of worksheets to cater for the diversity.
Thank you.
So I have a follow-up question on that. So would you use the differentiated worksheets in the same lesson, or would that be done more as a practice for them?
In the same lesson, different levels of worksheets. Maybe for some worksheets, they may ask some high-level questions. For others, they may some simple questions, and the simple questions is the basic aim of all the students should know for the simple questions. For others, maybe some more advanced one, so that they think more after the lessons.
So, in fact, in this particular lessons, you did not use any differentiation.
I did not. Because I think it's only a very introductions. All of them should know. And you can see my design of the worksheets. The last question is, think of one everyday life examples of percentage. They may have different varieties of answers here. They may think of something I really don't know. What they come across.
Okay, so usually when I try to ask question about two lessons, I would like to do some comparison. So I would like to ask both teachers here, actually talking about it's about the depth of knowledge or the level of challenge to students. So I can see in the two classes, then the level of challenge or depth of knowledge would be different. So how would you comment on your lesson and also your observation of the other lessons? So could I ask maybe Enson to talk about this first? So whether the challenge you set, how would you set the challenge level to the student? So you have a 24 students in your classroom, right?
Yes.
More or less. And then presumably they are of different levels. Some of them are more able than the other.
Yeah.
So how would you set your challenge level?
For these lessons, I do not set the challenge levels too high, but after the lessons, I observed that some, especially some of the points, some of the students really don't know. For example, 0%. For example, what really one means. After the lessons, some really don't know how to relate 0% and also one means after the lessons. And this is what I do not expect actually.
Could I chip in? I'm sorry for the interruption, but for this one, how did you know? How did you find out? So you think after the lesson you find this out, right?
Yes.
How did you find it out?
After they done the worksheet, I find that many raise the questions they really don't know, and you see in my videos I walk around, I find that some they can write the answer immediately, but some they are questioning, and they may ask their classmates, and I observe that they really cannot relate this to to the percentage. For example, what really 1 means or 0%. They really don't know what they related to the percentage. That means, and in the future, I may put more stress on these two areas so that they related these two to the percentage. This is maybe in the future. Of course, this lessons is not really in primary 5. It's really in primary 6. Maybe in the future in primary 6, I will try to modify the lessons so that most of the students can grab this concept.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Because we are both grade 5 students in the two lessons. So for grade 5 in the US is about 10 years old. In Hong Kong is 11 years old.
Yes.
So we may have 1 year difference in terms of stage of development. But I would like Enson to comment on Kristi's lessons about the level of challenge she set for her students. Would it be too difficult for Hong Kong students, or it may be more or less the same? How would you say about it?
After I watch your video, I find if it is implemented in my class, I think most of them in the second half of it, they may not understand, because many in your lectures, some questions, for example, 20% of a number, they may not really related to this, because you have introduced percent and also of a whole number, and they know they have to do the multiplications, and they really don't know why I have to multiply this percent to the whole number to get the part. For my students, they may not understand this. They may not understand this. Therefore, I won't set my lessons to such a high challenge level, and they may be extend to 1 or 2 lessons later, so that they got really understand what percentage is first, and then go forward.
And Kristi?
I definitely scaffold my lesson higher than Enson's because of what the lesson was. But we talked at the beginning of the year with my kids, and I know about they're not always going to know everything right away. And we have this saying called the power of yet. You don't know it yet. So what happens in most of my classes is that I scaffold mid to high so that I'm reaching them. And we go through you might not be getting it, but just stay with me and understand what's happening. And then what would go on is, what you would not have seen in this lesson because we stopped filming, is after we've done the whole group lesson and we've done some practice, I go around and I would tap certain kids and say, meet me at the front table. And then I would do a small group review with those kids that I knew weren't understanding completely. That way they were getting a more one-on-one kind of approach. But I knew, because I know my kids, because I've had them all year, I knew that probably 3/4 of that class was going to get it and understand pretty quickly. And I knew those handful that weren't going to. And after the filming crew left and everything was over, I said, okay, now. And sometimes I just ask them, if you didn't get it yet, come on up front. And they are very comfortable going, you know what? I could use a little bit more help. And they come up to my table and we sit and we review that way. And then if I would have assigned homework, which I didn't that day, those kids who didn't get it might have had 3 or 4 problems versus the kids who did get it may have had 6 or 8. Not that that's always the best way, but I want those kids who didn't get it to focus on those few, and the ones who did get it, show me that you really know. But that's sort of the way I teach. I kind of always gear a little bit higher, and then the kids who don't get it can come to me. And honestly, those high kids that I have, like the kids with the 6th grade math level, my students got very comfortable with saying, can I ask Aubrey for help? Because she understands. Can I ask so-and-so for help while you're working with the small group? And I let that happen because I think that's good interaction with them. And sometimes the kids explain it better than I do. That makes more sense to one another. So that's sort of how I worked my lesson.
Could I ask a follow-up question regarding how you scaffold your lessons? In fact, you at the end of the lesson, you expect that there may be 3/4 of the student will be able to master the skills that you taught, or what will be the percentage in your mind that at the end of the lesson that they will be able to master the skills?
I'd say with that particular lesson, half of them definitely mastered it. I thought about 3/4 of them would. I would say half of them definitely mastered it by checking their worksheets. Another fourth of them were okay. They had some silly errors. And then I had that group, and I could have given you the names of who they were going to be, who definitely needed more instruction the next day.
Yeah, thank you. And the same question to Enson. When you try to design your lessons, so what will be the percentage of students that you target at, that at the end of the lesson, they will be able to master all the things that you taught in the lesson?
Before the lessons, I expect, because it's only an introduction, I expect more than 90%. I expect to be more than 90%. But of course, after the lessons, for my estimations, is maybe around 85. Only a few don't know a few points. But most of them, I have confidence that they know when they step out of the classrooms, they know what really percentage is, why we use percentage, and why we taught it in the math lessons. They really understand what this lesson is about when they step out of the classroom.
Is it common in your lesson that you target about 90% or 85% that at the end of the lesson they will be able to master what you taught? Is it something that's common in your classroom?
Normally 7 to 80. Normally 7 to 80%.
70 to 80%.
Yes.
And how about Kristi? Is it also similar, or you aim at setting more challenging target, and then you aim at lower percentage? So what would your consideration?
No, I still aim pretty high. I would like them as many to master and be comfortable as possible. With this particular class, because obviously it changes every year, with this particular class, I could almost guarantee there was usually going to be about 25% that we're going to need reinforcement. So I would say I usually aimed for knowing that 75% were probably going to be really comfortable or get it without much help, and that there was always that small group, my lowest math kids, who may have gotten it but didn't know they got it and needed that extra reassurance. So I don't feel like I'm aiming low. I'm just realistic, knowing my kids throughout the year and knowing that it's going to be that same little group that just needs that extra love of, you understand it, let's work through it.
Yeah. So we're basically very similar, right? Target at about 80% of students, they will be able to do it. So I don't want to dominate all the questioning and asking so many questions. Any other people that in the room here, and also Larry?
Yeah, I just, if it's okay, I'd like to go back to what I had asked about originally, not to preclude any other, comments about the actual mathematics itself. But Jessica, you had an opportunity last time to sort of go through this process and see yourself and reflect on the video. Kristi, you've had this opportunity twice. Did that experience from when we did this last time impact the planning, or if did it impact it, and if so, how? And Jessica, you were at least involved in the planning of this a bit. So can you speak to that, both of you, please?
Yeah, actually, similar to Mr. Ng said, in Hong Kong, we expect the percentage after the lesson that the student can handle is really high, that we expect. And in our school, we always, the objective that we set for the lesson, we must achieve it. If it is, we cannot achieve it, then our school will come at us like something like, the lesson is not effective enough. if we cannot achieve that objective. So our objective will set really close to what they can achieve in that 45 minutes, and including calculation practice. Because last time we are doing shapes, the dimension is different. This time we are talking about numbers. So for numbers in Hong Kong, we are always concept and then do consolidation, do calculation, and then we move to the next part. Maybe when we go to discount, then we will teach them how to see the part that we are looking for or the percentage that we want to discount, and then we will do quite a lot of calculation. We normally run the math lesson in this way for number dimension.
And the question is also about, that how would you actually, because you have already taken part in 2 parallel lessons, so how would this kind of professional development would have any impact or affecting your
Last time when I saw Kristi lesson, I'm really interested in the sitting, the sitting on the ground, and I actually introduced this into my classroom because I think for the concept that difficult, they need to more challenging concept. I want they sit more closer to me because I think in the US the interaction with the students is really strong. And I really like the grouping that move around the station like in your classroom. Sometimes we do too. And but about the differentiation part, sometimes we sit in the groups like mixed ability. Sometimes this can help a bit on the differentiation. They discuss more in the group. Sometimes we do this. And but this time I didn't see the way that you sit like last time. But in fact, I really appreciate for the groupings that they move around and the interaction is really strong. Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question on this? You talk about try to ask the students to sit around you on the floor or whatever. When you talk to them. In Kristi's lesson last time, it's only a small group. It's not the whole class. So how about your class? Is it the same that you divided into different groups and then ask one group to sit close to you, or the whole class sitting close?
Because I'm still in try and error, learning from you. So I think I still have a long way to explore in this type of classroom sitting. And that time, I chose the girls sit around me, near to me, and then the boys can sit more far because the boys are really strong in mathematics. But the girls, they need more support, so the girls sit around me. And
thank you, Jessica. And Larry, you have a question for Kristi as well, am I right?
Yeah. Yes, the same question actually. How did did your participation last time impact what you did this time? And if so, how?
Well, first I was a lot more comfortable knowing what to expect. And the fact that Bryce didn't walk in with that huge camera was quite nice as well. But it did impact, to some degree, knowing that I needed to be diligent in what I was doing, so that my friends in Hong Kong could understand and follow along with me. But I don't know that I planned differently than I would have planned for any other lesson, quite frankly. I didn't do anything out of the ordinary because it was a parallel lesson. I did what I normally do. I did not teach in small group this time, Jessica, because I knew that they would get it all as a group pretty easily. Usually when I do the small group, it's something maybe I feel like they might have a little more struggle with. And then I group them accordingly. And again, it's end of year. I was trying to do something different just to keep them engaged and keep their attention on me.
Thanks. And one follow-up question for both of you. Are there things that you took away from this experience, especially last time, that you've had a chance to share with other colleagues in the building? is how are you able to actually sort of take this learning outside of just your own classroom, if that happens?
Daniel is the subject panel that with me last time, and we have professional development meeting with all the math teachers, and he also introduced Kristi's lesson, like the key point that we find it is quite good to learn from you, and we share with the math teacher, and on, yeah, for example, like the classroom setting, and we find that the questioning that you ask is quite one of the comment I'm quite agree is the aim and the style of questioning in Hong Kong and in America is quite different. You are more focusing on daily life and more diagonals like style when you are doing questionings. Although both of the classroom have a lot of questionings, but the one in Hong Kong is the style is different. It's more focused on the content converging, more converging the content, and US one is more divergent. This is what I think.
I did share a little bit with some of my colleagues about what I had done and what was going on with the parallel lessons. Honestly, not too much at this point, but I did share with them how things had transpired, and of course, you know, they're all wondering why this camera is coming into the room, what's going on. So I did talk somewhat. Most of them are running the other direction, saying, please don't videotape me. And I got to talk to Caitlin, who was first grade, and did her parallel lesson and kind of talk and be able to reassure her and discuss what was going to happen. So I did have some interaction with some of my fellow teachers in reference to what was going on.
If I can add something to that, one of the things, having been a part of this experience and referencing Caitlin, we are changing our instructional delivery model in our kindergarten through second grade classrooms. So we have 2 K2 buildings. And having watched this experience, we're just going to start talking about it this summer, and Caitlin's going to be a part of this, is using the idea of parallel lessons within the district. So as we're changing our instructional delivery model, and this is a pretty big mind shift and practice shift for our teachers, what we want to do is really help our K2 classrooms implement as similarly as they can. So really using parallel lessons as a true lesson study. So Jessica, as you're looking at how we've used different techniques, this is what I'm hoping to create in our 2 buildings, that we're able to videotape segments of a lesson or how we're introducing a topic, come together and really use this as a true lesson design. So what we've been able to do across continents now, I want to do within our district to really talk about instructional practices, which I think as superintendent, this is one of my largest takeaways, is the richness of the dialogue between what Hong Kong's seeing versus what we're seeing here in America and vice versa. And now what I hope to do is be able to recreate this within our own system. And I'm crazy enough to believe it will work. But just think, if we're able to create a library of different lessons on different topics, and then we can use this as model lessons for induction with new teachers coming in, and part of this is actually to get more of our teachers comfortable with this idea of being videotaped, not for evaluation, but how we can make our practices and our teaching craft stronger. And that has been by far the biggest takeaway that I've had through this. And I'm hoping that folks will not run away from the camera.
It was a big camera.
Yeah, people want to join this and the synergy with it to really help students.
I think that's wonderful. In fact, wonderful. I presume that, you know, now we are talking about intra-district, that kind of sharing, but presumably in the future there will be inter-district sharing. So, right, that is something very important as well. Yeah, I'm mindful of the time, but I just wonder whether other colleagues that you have observation that you want to make, question that you want to ask, view that you want to share. Yeah, so could I ask, at least my final question is actually, I'm really interested in the way that Kristi, you design your lesson. In the first part, you teach to the whole class, and then the second part is actually divided into groups. So different groups, you gave them some worksheet, you call it worksheet or whatever, some problem for them to solve. I presumably, the different group will have different level of difficulty. Some of them may be a more difficult, more challenging question, some of them easier. So when you divide them into groups, so would you have anything in mind that they will actually work together among the students, or they just individually tackle the problems?
In this particular lesson, they worked individually. They often do work in groups or in pairs, which I'm fine with. But for this particular lesson, they really did work individually, with the occasional asking their neighbor for some help if they were stuck. But I do both. This particular lesson was just more individual work, because I wanted to just double check that they were actually getting what I was teaching.
Yeah, thank you. So my second question is that, the same arrangement, let the student have different, or you call it, differentiated worksheet. You don't need them to, to come up as a group, right? So like, in Hong Kong, we have a big class, then we sit down together, we distribute different worksheet to different students. Will more or less serve the same purpose. But why, what other consideration that you have, you would, try to arrange the student in the group like this, as you did?
For this particular topic, just knowing what they knew off of fractions and decimals already, I really just thought about the kids that I was fairly certain would understand pretty quickly. I made probably the same amount of copies of each worksheet, quite frankly, and really made the decision kind of almost during the lesson, who was going to be able to handle the higher worksheet and who was going to be able to handle, who I would give just the more general worksheet to. It wasn't necessarily anything I had decided prior to the lesson starting, other than my gifted students and my 6th grade math student. I knew they would get the high level. But I did hand out a couple of others for kids who I could tell were getting the concept quite quickly and quite easily. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, in fact, more or less. In fact, my question is not a kind of, how would I say, a kind of comment. In fact, I would like to ask the same question to Enson. So basically in Hong Kong, if we have graded worksheet, we have differentiated worksheet, we will distribute it, in the class to individual students, and we will not actually group them together, right? Yes. So why we do it this way in Hong Kong? Why we don't not do a similar thing that Kristi have done in her class?
Because if we distribute them all at once, and maybe some of the questions the students do not really know how to do. But if actually I quite inspire your second half of your lessons. That means after teaching them the basic knowledge, ask them to do it in groups, and maybe in the future, in the coming lessons, I may group them in different levels so that one can help the others in working on the worksheet, rather than group them by their own. And in this way, I think they may help more in in these areas so that the students, the lower ability one can be helped by the higher ability students. And I will group them in this way and distribute different level of worksheets, although some may be holding a simple worksheet, the others may be some more advanced one. Maybe the lower level one maybe have only 5 questions, the others have 7 questions. But the higher level one may have the lower achiever. In this way, the lessons will be more attainable or more better.
So in fact, I just want to say, because in the US, it's quite common for you to group students into groups dependent on their ability. But in Hong Kong, normally we will not do it that way. In fact, we talked about this particular practice before. Probably in Hong Kong, we are very mindful about labeling effect. So people don't want to be labeled, to be less able group. But to some extent, if you focus on a group of students, they are homogeneous, they have similar problems, they have similar level. So for the teacher, it may be easier, to take care of them in that group. But in Hong Kong, if they are actually mixed up, that they are heterogeneous, sometimes may be difficult, right, for us to cater, for their difficulty they will encounter. I think that, the way that we do it, sometimes it's quite different. And therefore I raised the question and my observation, and hoping, particularly in Hong Kong, we can think about this kind of arrangement that will be able to give timely and also more focused kind of guidance to a group of students who will have similar abilities. So that is, the question that I try to ask.
My groups are not always based on ability. My groups change. My kids know that they are fluid groups, meaning just because you're in group A this week doesn't mean you're in group A next week. Sometimes I do just randomly pick the kids for a group and we work together. It really depends on the concept I'm teaching. If I know my lower kids are really going to struggle, I don't want to put them with my gifted kids because they're going to feel really bad about themselves. But I work really hard in my room to have that conversation that we're all learning the same thing. Some of us learn slower than others. And I work really hard so they don't feel bad about themselves, that you just don't understand it yet. It'll get there. But I do both kind of groupings, sometimes homogeneous, sometimes hetero. It just depends on the topic. But you definitely have to work hard on making sure the kids understand that, I hate to use this word, but you're not dumb. You just aren't there yet. We're going to keep working and keep working and keep working to get you to where you can be. And you might not ever get to the top, and that's okay. But we want you to do the best you can do. So that's my take on my groups.
Yeah, thank you. Just, follow-up question for today. The lesson that you taught in the video. In the grouping, they were grouped based on their ability, am I right, or no?
Just for the worksheet. Just for the work.
Not when they were going around the
No, when they were going around the rooms, to the walls, those were just random groups.
Okay, random group. Okay, thank you. Other questions from colleagues? Okay, if not, then that the wonderful evening here, morning there, then we will later on go back to have our dinner and wine, and then you have to go back to work. Sorry about that, So looking forward
back to coffee.
So we are looking forward, to our similar event in the future. Presumably next academic year, right? I hope that there will be more that kind of parallel lesson event between Hong Kong and the US and Pennsylvania. And hopefully there will be more, just among yourself over there in the US.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Larry,
I said
final
yes.
word?
No, I share that that goal. So we have started to work on some of this, and we'll be in touch. But and I think we all know that the summer is not so long. So it's the next academic year, even though this one's only just ended, will be here soon enough.
Good. And any other comment from colleagues here in Hong Kong?
No.
Monica and Bryce?
I would just like to make a comment that I very much appreciate the fact that you were both able to attend this again, and I just want to see this grow because we've started to talk about this and do a little bit of research, and the word lesson study is very common in the vocabulary, especially there in Hong Kong, but also there's a lesson study sort of special interest here in the United States. But parallel lesson is very unique, and not a lot of people know that name. So I'd like to see us be the trailblazers toward this new paradigm of how we do lesson study.
And I would just like to say thank you to everyone for being here this morning, this evening. I know that, as I think Kristi mentioned, it is, the end of the school year. The lesson was taught in May, and that I know can be a very challenging time of school year. But I think that this parallel lesson, the lesson was just as inspiring, led to just as rich discussion, even being at the end of the school year. So I really appreciate, all of the teachers, being willing to do this. And I'm also really excited to see where this goes forward, particularly the intra-district efforts in Pennsylvania. I think could be really valuable, just already having seen what it looked like to have, Kristi be in the classroom when Caitlin was teaching her first parallel lesson. I think was really sort of a unique application of this, to have had sort of a mentor who had already worked with Hong Kong, who was able to sort of walk Caitlin through the process. And I think there's a lot of potential for that in the future. So I'm really excited.
Thank you, Monica. And Julia, from your side, any last final words?
I was just going to say thank you again for the opportunity. I appreciate it. And I'd like to see others be a part of it as well.
We've really seen the benefits from this, and word is starting to spread about this within our district. And so I think as we continue to create opportunities, I agree with all of the comments, that I really think that we're onto something. And I think, Bryce, to take your idea, we can be trailblazers with this, and really create some very powerful opportunities for educators. And in the long run, it benefits our students. And what I love so much is the exchange of ideas, how we see things through our discussions and bring them back into the classroom, and how that's happening in Hong Kong as well, that you're seeing things and trying things. And I think in that regard, we all benefit from this. So I'm up for new opportunities and to keep going with this.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, so thank you very much. Basically, we look forward to a next parallel lessons, probably in September, October this year.
Wonderful. We're there.
Very
we're
good.
in. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning. Bye bye. Good morning.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.